Aggression is the biggest misconception in the entirety of Overwatch. People mistakenly think that the more aggressive you're playing, the less safe you are. But I'm here to tell you right now, that statement couldn't be more wrong. With the timestamp tips you'll see in this video, I won't just show you how you can be both very aggressive and very safe, I'll teach you the steps to implementing that advice in your own gameplay. I'd almost call it a golden rule of mine. Whenever you stack main, you take more damage so you're less safe, and you deal less damage yourself, so you're less aggressive. The first and arguably most important variable that can determine how aggressive and safe you are is whether you have an escape route and or an escape ability. For DPS, this would be Sojourn with her power slide, Echo with her flight, Genji with any of his abilities, including his wall climb, but most likely with his dash, Sombra with her translocator, and Tracer with her blinks and recall of course. This factor of having some ability, or what I like to call get out of jail free card, means that you can really push how aggressive of an angle you can take, and you can immediately dip out at a moment's notice. It's no wonder that whenever any creator makes a DPS tier list, these heroes are at the top end of the spectrum. Maintaining high levels of aggression while still having that oh shit button is highly correlated with how good a hero is. For tanks, this looks a little different. Normally, this won't take the form of mobility cooldowns that let you immediately escape, but sustained cooldowns that prolong how aggressive you can play. Sigma's shield, Zarya's bubble, Ramatra's block, and Winston's bubble are all forms of decreasing the risk associated with taking space aggressively or holding an aggressive amount of space. The exceptions to this are Doomfist and Ball, who just have insane mobility. Doom can take the most aggressive punch in the world and get away with it if he has his Meteor Strike or even his Slam available. And Ball has both the capability to do quick roll-throughs, but also hard-hitting pole drivers that he can also sustain through thanks to his adaptive shields. For supports, the two big ones here are actually Moira and Kiriko. I'm sure everyone remembers the entire fiasco 3 months back about that Metro clip, and it entirely revolved around how aggressive Kiriko could play while being extremely safe and taking basically next to no risk, because Kiriko does have that get out of jail free card in her teleports. Moira is actually a mixture of both the mobility and sustain factors mentioned prior. While her fade has nowhere near the amount of distance as Kiriko's TP, her fade is instant, on a lower cooldown, and doesn't require teammates to get value out of it. Where she wins over Kiriko is her sustain. Her heal orb and self-regen means that she can just stay on an aggressive angle for years, and little risk is associated with it. Here's two great examples showcasing how you can do aggressive play in a safe manner. You can play defensive and be at danger, and you can play aggressive but be safe. In that Sojourn example, you can play on top of her, you've got a fade, you can fade back, you've got plenty of cover to dodge around.
The high ground stuff is really interesting.
Exactly, yeah. Like that play onto the Reaper there is an aggressive play, right? But it's safe. Why? Because your Reaper's there. The foe is millions of miles away from our supports.
No, there's no way I was going to die to that.
There's no way, and it's an aggressive play, right? That is really important. Yeah. Not even a full day later after coaching this client, and he's saying how game-changing the coaching was. 1 hour with me can save you from losing hundreds of hours down the line. So if you're watching this video and you're tired, fed up and frustrated of being at the same rank, shoot me a DM on Discord. Escape routes are also important too, and the good thing with this tip is that it's universal. I always love giving the example on Ilios Lighthouse where you're playing Genji and cheekily playing the high ground. We'll get into other factors as to why this works so well, but one factor that massively helps in this being safe is that you have a clear escape route back down to the Mega. I haven't mentioned health packs yet, but if you can plan your escape route near a mini or even a Mega, that's even better because again, it increases your safety. The second factor is actually timing. There was this Tracer that I was coaching recently, and it came down to overtime, last fight of the entire game. Because there was so much going on, specifically on the point itself, the actual outskirts of the point became significantly safer to play around, because nobody was looking at it, they were looking at the point. The more devolved the fight became, the more dangerous it was to stay on points. You might have heard this phrase before, the more aggressive the play, the later it needs to be timed. While true, I would personally flip that. The later in the fight, the safer your aggression becomes. And it's so counterintuitive, so much so that I have to make a golden rule about it. But just remember that the next time you get into a sloppy fight, you shouldn't just be taking an aggressive angle to do more damage and just win the fight. If you want to be safer, taking an aggressive angle can actually help you do that in the first place. The third factor is uptime. Uptime means that you can stay on an angle for longer, which intuitively means that the time that you stay on the angle, you're safe. And there's 3 universal factors to uptime, which I'm going to abbreviate into HCL, like hydrogen chloride, you know I be on my Nile Red type shit, which stand for high ground, cover, and line of sight. High ground and cover kinda overlap. All pieces of high ground can also be pieces of cover, but not all pieces of cover are also pieces of high grounds. High ground just means that it's harder for enemies to reach you. It's something I constantly coach to my hit scan players whenever we're playing an anti-dive comp, not even just for aggression purposes, but just because staying on high ground buys more time, wastes more enemy cooldowns, and keeps them alive and safe. Of course, cover is great because it means you can DPK at any time you want and stop taking damage. In fact, cover is a universal must-have in any of these examples that I show. It's probably the key reason as to why you can play aggressive, but you're not safe most of the time. And the last factor, an OS, just means your team can see you while you're being aggressive, so that they can help you. The most obvious case of this is with supports, and they can often be the limiting factor. For example, on King's Row, say a soldier Illari are playing the high grounds, a great soft off angle. Unless it was very late in the fight, it would be a traditionally high risk, high reward play if the soldier split from his Illari and took a very deep angle, dropping off to the alleyway. Why? Because your support player hasn't got line of sight onto you. Now I will say, Kiriko does break this rule. I remember an example all the way back in Flash Ops of a Junkrat Kiriko flanking in the same spot on King's attack. And it's not just with Junkrat, mind you, it's with any DPS hero really. So if you want to have your cake and eat it too, getting a Kiriko to flank with you can not just be viable, but also optimal in some cases. More recently, in the current meta, Lucio Tracers have been the ones controlling the flanks most of the time, and if your Tracer is just mechanically worse, your Echo can also come in and make it a 3v2. I'm playing some clips of contenders coaches demonstrate this on TikTok, but it shows that you can be aggressively contesting angles while having the rest of your team make your job safer. Referring back to that Moira game on Busan, in the very first fight, if that Moira had faded to her Reaper and 2v1 the Pharah, because the Reaper is already dueling, the Moira would not only be exercising her aggression, she'd be doing it in a very safe manner. The last factor I have to taking aggressive angles safely is what I like to call chase capability. In other words, if you do actually take an aggressive angle, how likely is it that you're going to be chased down? Now this factor is a little bit difficult to reduce because it's dependent on what you play and what the enemy team plays too. But one crucial factor, as always, is mobility. If the enemy team are playing a poke comp and have no mobility, but you're playing Tracer, you can run rings around the enemy team, and even if your team loses the fight, you can just set up behind the enemy team and nobody's gonna chase you. You're setting up in an aggressive manner while still being very safe. Comparably, looking back at that Genji example in Ilios, it works on Genji and say not Illari or Zen because Genji has the mobility to prevent anyone from chasing him underneath. Now there is a caveat to this. If you are playing against heroes that can chase you, most notably Doom, Sombra and Tracer, then it's going to be harder to take more aggressive angles safely. However, you can still use the other factors in this video, especially timing, to increase your safety in the long run. The last factor to chase capability is actually range or distance. I think this works best with Soldier because he has the mobility to run around the map, but he also has the range to keep himself at a safe distance. For example, on Lijiang Garden's retake, you can flank all the way through White Room, keep your distance, even force point, and if someone starts chasing you, you already have a head start because of your range and the mobility in your sprint too. This can also work for Tracer. I mean, I've seen Tracers blink straight into their target, not keeping any distance or range whatsoever. Cover and timing and the other factors also play a part in this too, but if they just played 10 meters away, they'd be chilling. Bing chilling, one might say.
Be chilling!
Anyways, that's it for the video. This is yet another addition to my advanced macro series, which, if you like this video, you'll definitely like that playlist. As always, get my coaching down below, and until next time.